I'm going to start out today by telling you a story about a little girl. This little girl was adopted at birth. She was born into a family who treated her like a princess from the time they brought her home when she was 4 days old. This little girl had a very happy life. She grew up on a little cattle ranch and had her first pony when she was 5 years old, and just had the most wonderful life and was a very happy-go-lucky little girl. When she was 3 or 4 years old, she started going to church with a little girlfriend of hers because her parents just didn't belong to a church and didn't feel as much of a need to take her to church as she felt like she wanted even at that young age. After she had been going to church for probably a few months, she was studying about Jesus, and she thought Jesus was just the most wonderful thing she had ever heard of at that young age. And long about this same time, she became very close with an older family member, not an immediate family member, but an extended family member, became very close with him, and they enjoyed playing together. And probably about 3 or 4 months into that newfound fun relationship with this family member, things kind of turned dark, and the family member started molesting her and making advances towards her that she felt were wrong, but at that young age didn't know what to do about it. So this continued on for many years, and when she was about 12 years old, she finally started going to church with some girlfriends of hers from school. Their names were Lisa and Kathy. And these girlfriends were very close friends of hers, and they had been going to this particular church for several years, and they had been trying to get her to go with them for a long time. But when she finally relented and started going to church with them, she started to cry every time that she was in church with them. And she couldn't understand. It was making her uncomfortable. She wanted to go to church, but it was just making her uncomfortable that she was crying so much. And so finally she asked one of her friends, why am I crying? I don't understand. I like being here. I love the music. I love hearing about Jesus. And the friend Lisa told her, I think it's because the Lord's calling you. I think you need to walk down the aisle and give your life to the Lord. And so that made sense. She decided that she would do that. So the following week, she went down the aisle, gave her life to the Lord, and was baptized. And this was at age 12. During the preceding years, the molestation had continued from this family member. But after she became a believer in the Lord and was baptized, her life changed. She gained the strength that she needed to tell her abuser that she would not allow him to touch her anymore. That was a day of freedom for her. But along about the same time, she began to notice boys at school, as most teenagers and pre-teenagers do. Her mother decided that she needed to tell the young girl that it was not okay for boys to touch her, that any boy that touched her had the wrong motives, that he didn't really care anything about her, and that girls who allowed boys to touch them that way were bad girls. They were dirty girls, and she shouldn't have anything to do with them. Well, that planted a seed of shame and guilt in the little girl, because she had already been touched by a boy for a long time. It had been going on for a long time before she ever really even knew that it was wrong, even though it felt uncomfortable to her and she didn't like what he was asking her to do. So the seeds of guilt and shame were planted at that point. And those seeds continued to bloom as she went through her teenage years and dated several different boys and felt the need to be promiscuous because that's what she had grown up getting to know. I mean, she had only done that or always done that in her life. And so she had conflicting feelings of guilt and shame because of what her mother was telling her, but then feelings of a need for that because she felt accepted that way. So the promiscuity continued and eventually led her into a bad relationship that caused a date rape and a subsequent abortion. The guilt and shame continued to grow in this young lady as she developed into adulthood. And then one day the Lord sent her an angel. This angel rescued her from the years of torment and self-doubt and insecurity that had developed as a result of the things that she had been told and the things that she had experienced. I can speak with authority about this young lady because the young lady in the story is me. So at that time, the Lord sent me an angel and my husband, and I locked away all of the bad memories in Pandora's box in my mind, and I thought that the lid was going to stay on the box forever. And it did for a very long time. Over the course of the next 15 years, we had 4 children, and I was a stay-at-home mom and really enjoyed my life. And then one day when I was about 35 years old, I was home taking care of my new baby, and an Oprah Winfrey show came on. And Oprah was talking about sexual abuse that she suffered at the hands of a family member. And at that point, the lid to Pandora's box came off, and many memories started to come out and actually continued to come out over the course of about the next 6 months. After that, I became very obsessed with taking charge of things and being in control of things. I became president of several different organizations at the same time. We owned our own business. I was teaching writing lessons. I became just hyper involved in many different things because I was really seeking approval from any and everybody that would give it to me. And at the same time, I became very stressed. We started to have financial problems. We started to have problems with our marriage. And I became very bitter and yelling at my kids. It was just a very horrible time of life for me. And I decided that I needed some help. So I sought out secular counseling, and I went to the counselor for probably about 6 months, and I did regain some of my confidence, and I was able to put some things in proper perspective. But I still did not feel whole. I still felt I had very low self-esteem. I was very insecure, although on the outside I made it look like I had it all, that life was perfect. In about 2001, I decided that I needed to start going to church. I needed to take my children to church. My husband and I had been away from church for a very long time, and I decided that it was time for us to go back. And my husband, being the doll that he is, would pretty much go along with whatever I wanted to do. And so at that point, we made the decision to go back, and that's when life really changed for me. Along about that same time, my daughter became involved in a pageant organization. She had been dancing for a number of years, and she wanted to try her hand at pageantry. So I agreed and went along as a parent for the next few years. But then when she stopped competing, I became involved as a director because I really felt that it was a good organization and that it taught young ladies how to be the best that they could possibly be, and it also taught them to realize that life was not all about them, but it was really about being in service to others. And so that was really something that I felt very strongly about. And so I continued on with this organization for several years and felt like that I had found myself, that it was my calling, that it was really what I was supposed to be doing. One day in 2007, I was getting ready for church, and I felt the Lord put upon my heart that I needed to walk away from this pageant organization because He had some other things He wanted me to do. And I dug my heels in and I resisted for a long time because I just felt like He was asking me to give up something that had probably really almost become a god to me, an idol to me. And He was wanting me to focus on Him. And during this time, I met a lady who, and this was all completely orchestrated by God because we had moved to a neighborhood that caused me to meet this lady whom I would have never met otherwise. And this lady was a pastor's wife at a local church in my town, and she had developed a Bible study for women who had been sexually abused as children. I decided that it was a good thing for me to do, to go through this Bible study, and it has turned out to be the best decision that I've ever made for myself. In 2007, later in 2007, I went through the study, and I learned how to forgive myself, forgive my abuser. I learned about ambivalent feelings and what that meant, and how that could be a real detriment to recovery. I learned about how shame and guilt are not of the Lord. And so during that process, after I went through all that, and I came out on the other side really feeling whole, the Lord put upon my heart again that I needed to pull away from this pageant organization long term, because He had some work for me to do. And, you know, I couldn't imagine still at this point. I really continued to resist for probably about another year. And then I finally did leave the pageant organization after going through a process of interviewing for advancement in the organization that I did not get. I felt like that was a word from the Lord that I really did need to look at other things. So about that time, I reunited with my friend Lisa, who was the friend that led me to the Lord. We had kept in touch a little bit throughout the years, but for about the previous year to that, she and I had been keeping in regular contact. And she told me during that time that she had been sexually abused as a child. And she also told me that she had become homosexual. She didn't feel like it was as a result of that, even though I did feel that way. I never voiced that to her. A few months after that, I received a phone call one day from another friend who asked me if I had seen Lisa, that she had not been seen for a few weeks. And immediately red flags went up, and I started to panic and called for a meeting for a group of our friends to get together. And we discovered over the next few weeks that Lisa had disappeared, and that it looked as if she had been murdered, possibly by her partner. The next year was spent in search of Lisa and trying to piece together what may have happened to her. And to this day, we still don't know where Lisa is. But one thing that I can say for sure, Lisa was a Christian. The decisions that we made in our lives after both having been sexually abused took us down completely different paths in life. And I can honestly say that my decisions were led completely by the Lord. And through the whole process of everything that has gone on in my life, I can look back now and see that the Lord has been there beside me through the abuse, through the years of promiscuity, through the time when I was not attending church. He was there the whole time. I just didn't see it. This Bible study that I went through solidified my resolve that the only answer to recovery from abuse of any kind, sexual or any other kind, is only found through the Lord. That's the only place where you can put addictions behind you, where you can put sexual abuse behind you, where you can put family violence behind you, destructive decisions that you've made in your life. It only comes through the Lord. And I can say that now, and looking back over my life and the number of things that have gone on, the Lord has brought me back to the pageant organization, and now I have a more active role than I ever have had. And that is resulting in me being able to directly work with young ladies and help them to realize what the Lord has for them and what their lives are supposed to be when they go down the right road. I am where I am today because the Lord had a path for me. He had a plan for my life. He needed to use the things that I went through in my life to prepare me to be a blessing to others. And that's probably the biggest blessing of all, is that I'm now able to use the horrible experiences that happened to me to help others who have gone through the same thing.